Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Change Management, Engaging Stakeholders for Success. My name is John Wolf, and I'm the Senior Solutions Manager at BlackLine, and I'll be your host and moderator for today's event. This webinar is part of BlackLine's Finance Innovation Week. Finance Innovation Week is a series of 10 webinars over 3 days, and you can see the schedule on the screen right now. If you can watch these live, please do and take advantage of the free CPE available. If you are not able to watch the sessions live, they will be available on demand. However, CPE is not available for on-demand sessions. Before we begin, we wanted to cover a few housekeeping items. At the bottom of your audience console are multiple application widgets you can use. If you have any questions during the webcast, you can click on the Q&A widget at the bottom and submit your question. We will try to answer these during the webcast, but if a fuller answer is needed or we run out of time, it will be answered later via email. We do capture all questions. You can expand your slide area by clicking on the maximize icon on the top right of the slide area or by dragging the bottom right corner of the slide area. If you have any technical difficulty, please click on the Help widget, which covers common technical issues. Also, simply refreshing your browser can clear common issues such as slides not advancing or loss of sound. This webinar is eligible for one CPE CPD credit. In order to earn the credit, you must attend the webinar for at least 50 minutes and complete 3 polling questions to earn CPE credit for this webcast. Please click directly on the poll slide to submit your answer. Do not submit your polling response via the Q&A widget. You can track the progress of your CPE certification using the CPE certification widget, which is the CPE icon at the bottom of your console. If you meet all the requirements for CPE credit during the live webinar, your certificate will be automatically generated and available for download directly in the CPE certification widget at the bottom of your screen during or after the session. If you have any questions or concerns, feel free to email cpe@transformation.blackline.com. And with that, I'd like to hand it over to Ushma over at Clearsulting for their presentation. Ushma?
Awesome. Thanks so much, John. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ushma Trivedi. I am a director at Clearsulting. I'm based in Chicago. Clearsulting is a consulting firm based in Cleveland, Ohio. I've been with the company for over 7 years. And really today, I'm really excited to kind of talk about what we all know to be true. Technology alone doesn't drive transformation, the people do. And so our conversation today is going to focus on how to engage your stakeholders early, specifically in BlackLine implementations, as we talk about the presentation today, but really is applicable across any type of transformation project that you're looking to drive, and how to engage those stakeholders early to ensure that we can set our programs up for success. We're going to discuss the importance of engaging those stakeholders early in the implementation. We'll talk about common challenges that we've seen as we've come across various types of BlackLine implementations of all different sizes. How do we structure something we at Clearsulting call a change impact workshop? And then how does that workshop really help provide value throughout your implementation by being a constant, providing stability, and sustaining the change once you go live or have optimized on your BlackLine journey? So we really want to talk today about how, while we may be implementing a new tool or we're focusing on solving some technology problems, how focusing on people to use those systems in the future is the key to success. So a little bit more about who we are at Clearsulting. We are a platinum implementation partner for BlackLine. That is the highest level of partner that is available, and we've had over 10 years of experience implementing BlackLine and over 500 various types of implementations across all of the various modules in the BlackLine platform. We've implemented BlackLine for several of our Fortune 20 companies and have received the Partner of the Year award for the last 5 years, proving to have a strong partnership with BlackLine and really understanding what the tool can provide. We have over 150 team members that are solely dedicated to our BlackLine implementation practice, and we have those representatives all over the world, really making BlackLine implementation the bread and butter of what Clearsulting does day in and day out. Clearsulting really prides ourselves in a people-first mentality. There's a lot of times where we hear directly from our clients where our team members have connected with our clients and their organizations on a very personal level as they've gone through their BlackLine journey. And so it's no surprise that we take the same type of approach on creating a connection with you and your users within your organization as part of having a strong change management strategy and approach. We believe change management is the secret sauce to a successful BlackLine implementation. And so let's start with why this topic is so critical. Technology doesn't drive transformation. People do. And now, while my friends in the IT organization may not necessarily agree with that statement, McKinsey really says that 70% of transformations fail, and the leading cause of that failure is poor change management. And when you pair that with another statistic of failed transformations can cost an average of 12% of a company's annual revenue, we're looking at some scary data. And when we're not taking the time to invest in change management from the beginning, it really shows that it can have a detrimental effect to the success of your program. When looking further on understanding how change management fits within your transformations, 72% of leaders admit that they don't know what employees need in order to do something different or to make sure that a change can actually succeed. So how do we change that? We need to talk about change management from the very beginning. Change management should be part of the conversation as early as, hey, what problems are we looking to solve in the next fiscal year? What technologies are we looking to look at to help us solve these different problems? Who are we going to potentially work with to either implement that? As part of those very early conversations, change management needs to be part of the conversation, ensuring typically at that point in time, your leadership is aligned to making sure that we're going to support our people with robust change management is the way to start down this journey. Once you've decided that technology or you've decided on the journey that you want to go down, ensuring that we really start actioning change management from day one is absolutely critical. The early embedment of change management is where the success happens, as long as that it's integrated from day one. So that's going to bring us to our first poll question. So John, I'll turn it over to you.
Great, thanks, Ushma. So a reminder, you need to answer 3 poll questions in order for CPE credit. So this is our first poll question. How confident are you that your organization fully considers people and process impacts during financial system changes? A, very confident. Change management is embedded in all of our projects. B, somewhat confident. We address it, but inconsistently. C, not very confident. Technical design often outweighs people's focus. Or D, unsure. I'm not involved in that part of our projects. So as a reminder, we are going to have 4 polling questions. You need to answer 3 of them in order to be eligible for CPE credit. Looks like we got about 84% of attendees who've answered. I'm going to give this We'll give it another, say, 10 or 15 seconds here to get your answers in. So for those of you who have not submitted, just please answer your question. Any guesses here, Ushma, on what you think might be the leading answer?
I have two. Either one, we're going to see it absolutely even across the board, which I wouldn't be surprised, or I'm going to see that it's probably inconsistent. And if that is the case, I wouldn't be surprised in seeing that, because I think also defining what change management means is so nebulous for folks. So I think if we look at the responses, if we've hit...
Yep, let's give it 3 seconds. Get your responses in. 3, 2, 1. Great.
Okay, yeah. So, I'm not surprised to see that, the biggest indicator here was around inconsistency. Oftentimes, I think a lot of people think that change management is communications and training, and that's what change management is. Change management is so much more than that. There's an actual methodology, which we'll talk about in a little bit, on how do you guide your people through change. There's indicators, ways to actually quantify if your change management is successful or not. But oftentimes a lot of people will say, oh, we sent out a couple emails, or we held a town hall here and there, and chalk that up to change management. And it's so much more than just pushing communications into the organization and really having a strategy behind it to back up the consistency across your transformational journey.
Most definitely.
Great. So with that, we'll kind of move on into some of the issues or challenges that we've seen within BlackLine implementations. The first and foremost is that BlackLine usually isn't the top priority or the only priority for an organization. I think that a lot of people are probably shaking their heads as they're listening to that statement. If only our BlackLine project was the only thing the organization was working on, I think we would all love that, and we would all love for that to be the top priority. But that's usually not the case. It's usually part of a larger transformation that is occurring within your finance organization or across your organization as a whole. BlackLine sometimes can just be a piece of that. But even if it is one of your main priority projects that the organization is prioritizing, the amount of stakeholders that sit across the BlackLine platform and have interest in what the BlackLine platform can do for your operations creates a lot of gray area and can create a lack of stakeholder alignment. That is probably the number one challenge that we see as we come into organizations and understand the landscape, is that based on what either BlackLine is bringing or the priorities as a whole for the organization, everyone has different priorities, different agendas, different outcomes that they're looking to drive. And there tends to be a lack of central direction that is being given within the organization. We also see that, there's a lot of inconsistent process standards. Oftentimes, if we're implementing something like tasks or recs for really global organizations, it's oftentimes we're seeing that there are different ways of doing things around the globe, even though we may be talking about account reconciliations at the end of the day, or month-end close checklists at the end of the day. Those inconsistent process standards create a lot of ambiguity on how things are being done, and we have to bring people into the same room to have conversations with one another for us to really identify what the path forward should be. Limited adoption support and training. If you talk to me at a different time, I can go on a whole nother tangent around adoption support and the change management needing to continue after you've gone live, but not having that change management throughout leading up till go live is a recipe for disaster in having the adoption that you're looking to drive after go live. Resistance to changing established workflows, referencing back to some of our previous experience We've worked with organizations that are replacing 20 to 25-year-old legacy systems and moving on to BlackLine, and the amount of resistance that we see because people have just used certain tools for so long is very common. And then unclear accountability and ownership. Change management just isn't about your end users and making sure that they're ready for the change. There's a lot of change management that happens within project teams or within your core working teams around who's owning decision-making rights and who's accountable for certain aspects of the project. And so having strong change management not only takes care of your end users and making sure that they're ready to go for these new tools and new processes, but also identifying new ways of working within your core project teams, and having that kind of roles and responsibilities discussion throughout the project. So from here, what does Clearsulting bring to the table as we start to think about what does strong change management look like? And we really bring this concept around a change impact workshop. Over the last couple of years, change management has continued to be a hot topic where organizations are willing and understand the investment, not only from a time standpoint, but also monetarily to invest in change management and carve out that priority for things like this. So the Change Impact Workshop is conducted in the early part of your project, probably around when design is about to be locked down, and it acts as a bridge between planning and execution. It's really meant to help identify how changes impact people, processes, and systems. And it's where your alignment happens before technical build actually starts. And it's a really interesting point in the program or project where we host this workshop, because we really just came out of design. People are kind of in the mindset of starting to understand what the future looks like, but we aren't quite sure on how we're actually going to get there. And so this workshop sits nicely in that time frame to really help identify what the how is going to look like. So we define scope and stakeholders. So who's affected, how are they affected, to what degree. We assess those change impacts. So we really understand what is the ripple effect of the changes that we're looking to either implement or consider. We highlight risks and dependencies on other changes. That's another thing that we often see doesn't occur is, hey, this change needs to occur first in order for another change to follow. And then we also use this time to really develop the change strategy, the communication plan, and ensuring that we have the right plans in place for awareness and skill sets and reinforcement, all of which we'll talk about in greater detail. So this can be done in person or virtually, but really has proven at Clearsulting to be a great place to be a meeting of the minds across the business, have different perspectives in the same room, and kind of have a mutual understanding amongst all of these representatives for their various areas. So that way, when everyone leaves, they're really on the same page as far as the change strategy is concerned. And so helps with early risk detection, clear stakeholder ownership, targeted engagement strategies, all rooted in the fact that we want to be deeply human as we continue down our journey. So the purpose of the Change Impact Workshop, we really want to increase awareness. So what we typically do in these workshops is we bring representatives from all different parts of the business and IT. We never can do something in a silo, the business making decisions on their own, IT teams making decisions on their own. We really bring everyone into the same room. And we'll also go as far as inviting internal controls as part of the conversation so that the controls team is aligned. If you have a shared service model within your organization, we'll have representatives from your shared service centers in there. And then we'll also have finance leadership in the room. If you have a global process owner, or if you have an R2R lead, things of that sort, and really making sure that we're bringing everyone together to increase the awareness of the change strategy that we're going to be rolling out. We identify impacts. So we'll take a look at what is the current state of certain processes, technology, things of that sort, and we'll map it to future state processes. And then we look at those that are in the room and say, help the change management team understand the impacts of these changes. We may see something as a high impact, and in fact, we've been told, oh no, that's actually a low impact. And then there may be things where we may see something as a medium impact, and we're told by the stakeholders in the room, no, that's a high impact. Really getting people to opine on the impacts and helping us understand culturally within your organization what are the changes that are going to matter to people helps us and gives us so much more ammo as we're putting our change strategy together on how we're going to communicate these changes, where we're going to communicate these changes, so on and so forth. That kind of also covers the validates assumptions. You know, we really want to make sure, because typically we're coming in from an external standpoint, you know, Clearsulting into an organization. Hey, this is what we would assume would be a high level change or a low level change. Can you help corroborate that or help us pivot as needed? And then having all of those conversations really help the adoption. You know, some of you may have gone through journeys in the past where you've rolled out changes and you may have faced some resistance, and you ask, hey, you know, help me understand, why are you concerned? What are some of the questions that you have? And oftentimes it's, hey, I just needed to be in the room to be able to opine on how we're going about doing something or give ideas on how we need to do something. By hosting this change impact workshop earlier in your BlackLine journey, you're bringing those folks into the room. You're creating space to hear them from the onset of the project. Those folks then turn around and end up becoming your champions. They're going out and they're saying, hey, I had a seat at the table. I got to understand the thought processes of the project team or the reasonings why we're doing X, Y, and Z. And then they help us with adoption as they continue to move down the change journey. They're really becoming folks that can vouch for the decisions that we're making, that can support and cheerlead the different types of communication that are going out, all in an effort to help enable adoption as we get closer to go live. So again, the idea of this entire change impact workshop is to bring folks together, force them in a way to have conversations with one another, pressure test if there are things that need to really get changed. If they don't need to be changed, what's the level of change that is happening, and really help educate the change management team directly from the business and directly from IT as we start to really put pen to paper and finalize that change strategy. So, kind of talked a little bit about this in that last slide, but, when we start to think about how you bring both groups of people together, folks that are really focused on the technical side versus people that are really focused on the people side. I personally myself, and I forgot to mention this at the beginning of the session, I'm a ProSci certified change practitioner. And one of the things that we really talk about within the ProSci methodology is that you can't do the technical side without the people side, and you can't do the people side without the technical side. And so when you think about the technical side, you're creating a system that is user-friendly, that is meant to drive automations, drive integrations across different systems, really set up workflows that people want to use. And that is 50% of the equation, and making sure that our tool is nice to use, is easy to use, people enjoy using it, and it works the way that it's supposed to, or as we said that it should. But then the other 50% is the people that are going to use that technology. So how are we building awareness? How are we creating a desire that, hey, I want to use BlackLine. I may have used Excel for 20 years and I've done my reconciliations in Excel, how do I create desire for those users that are going to want to lay that Excel down and move into the new world of BlackLine? How do we equip our people with the knowledge and the skills to be able to use BlackLine? It's not just a training. It's giving them, homework assignments that they can go and work on, or they can play around in Sandbox, or we can do knowledge checks to ensure that those skills are there as they're getting ready to use the new tool. And then let's also reinforce, how are we telling people, hey, keep up the good work, or hey, help me understand how I can get you better equipped to using the tool. And then really sustaining, embedding changes into the organizational culture. Do you have a center of excellence that you stood up either as part of this project, or you're transitioning a previous center of excellence to the new world, and creating a ecosystem, as I call it, for becoming user advocates? And how do you continue to keep the user top of mind as you continue on your BlackLine journey past the initial implementation, and create a user advocacy within that center of excellence? And so then the last part of this piece, I would be remiss to not talk a little bit about the ProSci methodology that we leverage at Clearsulting. So ProSci's kind of principal methodology, if you will, is called the ADKAR model, and it stands for awareness, desire, knowledge, ability, and reinforcement. And so when you've done the change impact workshop and you need to come out of it with action items, or you have an idea of where the resistance may be, the challenges may be, so on and so forth, we then put it through this ADKAR model. And we actually quantify how we feel people are actually moving through this methodology. So we start with awareness. Do people know what we're doing? Do they know that we're using BlackLine in the future? Do they know that what tools we're going to be ultimately sunsetting? Do they know the timing of when all of this is happening? Do they have an idea of the need for the change, the why behind why we are doing it, and if we don't do it, what would happen? And then we move into the desire. Desire is a piece where you'll typically see the most amount of hesitation, because it's a personal choice that you have to make. Do you want to move forward in supporting this on an individual level? ProSci says that if you don't have a 100%, of buy-in, you're going to have what we call a Swiss cheese kind of view of change management in the future, meaning instead of a full block of cheese, you're going to have a lot of holes and a lot of people that aren't necessarily bought into it. So we look at desire as part of desire campaigns that we will start coming out of the Change Impact Workshop, and really measuring how much of people are they signing up, throwing their hand up and saying, yes, I want to be part of this. I understand the changes. I'm open to what you all have to suggest and provide, which is really the key point in the whole ADKAR model. Then knowledge is, okay, do they understand how things are going to change? Do they understand what's changing from current state to future state? The ability will be training and them being actually able to get into the system, understand how to use the system, be able to poke around, so on and so forth. And then reinforcement. This one is the one that tends to kind of get forgotten the most. It's, okay, we've gone live, now what? And so going back to the Center of Excellence example that I gave you of how are we creating a place where we can reinforce good behaviors, meaning let's do a highlight or a cheers for a team that has adopted tasks really well, or has done 100% of their journal entries within BlackLine, versus how do we use the data in BlackLine to understand behaviors that we would like to change. Maybe we have a particular team that is struggling to leverage the materiality thresholds that we've identified within account reconciliations, and they may still be reconciling down to the penny. Let's leverage maybe our admin team to mine that data out of BlackLine, identify places where we can do some key targeted follow-ups to understand why that change is not sticking, and work with that team directly to get them over the change curve. So, going back, I had mentioned to John earlier, is that change management just isn't communications, this isn't just emails and town halls. There is a much more structured methodology and strategy that sits behind how Clearsulting approaches change management of various size implementations, and we really base what we do in the ADKAR model. So I've rambled a little bit here, John. I think we're ready for our next poll.
Yeah, you're doing great. This is our next poll. So this is our poll question number 2. Which area do you find most challenging when implementing BlackLine or other finance technologies? A, stakeholder alignment across business units. B, communicating the why behind the change. C, training and user adoption. And D, measuring success after go live. So again, as a reminder, we have 4 polling questions. This is polling question number 2. And for those of you who are paying attention, you need to answer 3 questions in order to get your CP credit. So yeah, and I would say too, Ushma, some of these challenges, right, they're not just specific to BlackLine. I would think that they're specific to any sort of financial transformation.
Completely, and not even financial, right? So really understanding the importance of having a constant or stability throughout any type of journey is so important. I talk about this a lot when I'm meeting with clients in the beginning of stages of discussions on partnering for their implementation. And, the question I get asked is, well, why can't the project team that's also looking at the technical side just take care of the people side as well? And the way that I kind of present that is, we have team members at Clearsulting from a change management standpoint that are strictly and only focused on your people. We have other team members that are focused on optimizing your BlackLine functionality and leveraging it as much as you possibly could need. We have other team members that are really taking a closer look at your processes, because we are big believers that a technology isn't going to solve all your problems. You have to have good processes underneath. And then we also supplement all of that with people that are strictly focused on your people and making sure that we're empowering people every step of the way. And so they're sitting with your technical folks and your functional folks in meetings, in design sessions, and really taking away key items that we need to be able to communicate back into the business. So something, just a way to think about any type of project that you're doing, not just BlackLine, but any type of technology type of transformation.
Definitely. Okay, we'll give it about 3 more seconds to get your final answers in, and we will see the results here. Okay.
Okay.
Two leading questions with the getting alignment across the business users and the training and user adoption. And if I had a guess, I would have gone with training and user adoption.
Yeah. So let me talk about the top 2 answers. And wow, it's really interesting. The numbers couldn't be any closer to one another. But the stakeholder alignment across business units is why it's very important to start that conversation from the very beginning, right? So if you're saying, hey, we need something that's more scalable for our month-end close process as a whole, and the technology we're looking at is BlackLine, and we need to make sure that we have change management as part of the conversation, because like I mentioned earlier, it's not just about your end users. A lot of the times I'm forcing leaders into a room and let's have, a little bit of a kumbaya session across all of us. And the change management that's needed there also often gets underestimated because it isn't just about end users. So stakeholder alignment across business units. The other thing I'll say on that point as well, before I go to the next one, is there's not a I've never seen the method of I'm just going to tell my people they have to do this work out very well. Now, do I say that we don't need any top-down messaging? Also, no. There has to be just as much top-down messaging as there is a bottoms-up approach as well. So a lot of times I'll hear, leaders just say, I don't need change management. I'm just going to tell people they're going to have to do it, and then they're just going to have to do it. And then we typically see them having issues in the user adoption area, because what happens is, well, the person at the top said, I'm going to have to do this, but I still like my particular ways. So I'm going to do shadow processes. I'm going to manage my month-end close checklists in Excel, or I'm going to still reconcile down to the penny because I was never told the why or the how or what's in it for me. I was just told I had to do it, and I'm going to keep doing whatever I was doing in the new system as much as possible. So just some additional kind of reactions and thoughts to these particular responses, but not surprised to see that those are the two leading responses for this poll. Great. So moving on, a little bit more about the workshop flow and kind of how we did that and how we typically bring this to different clients of ours. So when you define scope and stakeholders, it's really a science behind it. And part of this has to do with a little bit of your cultural considerations within your organization. But as I mentioned earlier, we really made sure that we had proper representation from key parts of the project. So obviously we had our business/business process folks. I mentioned that we had our shared service center representation. Oftentimes when we bring in shared service centers and representation from those organizations, if you have more than one that are geographically dispersed, we start to pick up on various cultural differences. So if you have, shared services in the eastern part of the world versus the southern part of the world, the way that you interact and folks receive information is very different. So having those folks all in the same room where we can try to provide a global approach, but then tag on some cultural nuances is really important. We'll have IT in the room. Oftentimes, IT will still have perspective on how to communicate with end users because they are sometimes interfacing directly with end users on any technical issues. So we want to make sure that they're brought to the table to be able to opine on that. And then controls. I can't stress enough making sure that our friends in audit are very comfortable and that they understand how to ultimately communicate with your external audit partners is very key. And so by bringing them in at this point in time just gets them comfortable to pressure test any of the changes that we're looking to identify. And then we assess the change impacts. So we'll look at current state, we'll map that up against future state, we'll identify, hey, are there going to be any pain points as we move into future state? Just having some additional clarity and information on how we're going to go about the change impacts is very helpful from all of those representatives. We'll analyze and report findings. So if there are key dependencies, hey, we actually can't turn on functionality A, B, and C until we've done items X, Y, Z. That gets highlighted in this workshop and in this exercise. And then also readiness gaps. We actually just did this for an intercompany client a couple months ago. And as we were mapping out the processes and we had folks in the room from different parts of the business, they're like, well, I'm not ready to take that change on until we have process X, Y, and Z, finalized. Or another one that has come up at a couple different oil and gas companies is around open item management and managing those directly on the face of their reconciliation. When we had the conversation of we're taking that away, there was a gap that had been identified. Hey, if we're going to take this away from users and they're no longer going to manage their open items on the face of their rec, where upstream in the process are we going to be doing that? So identifying those types of gaps comes out in these types of workshops. And then ultimately, by defining all of those things, we're able to create a communication plan, or as sometimes we call it, an intervention plan, with all of those different nuances and understandings and dependencies highlighted. So if it is something that is a high impact or a high level change in the organization, that's not something we're going to wait till training to talk about. We're going to identify different points throughout the next few weeks leading up to training where we're going to reiterate that. I think the stat is you need to hear something 7 times before it sticks. And so identifying an intervention plan that allows us to cadence those communications reminders leading all the way up until training, because that shouldn't be the first time they hear something that's quite impactful. So, you know, really kind of what do we get out of these types of workshops? We gain the clarity on when and where changes are going to happen. We're able to identify particular groups. So in part of the tracker that we use to facilitate this workshop, we have an impacted groups column that really allows us to highlight who those organizations are or those groups of people are. We can engage strategically. So again, this is really making sure that we're involving people from the beginning to opine on our change management strategies and ensuring that they can leave that workshop all on the same page, you know, talking about the same things, and that the messaging is accurate. We as a change management team can get a lot better educated on the different types of communication strategies. We'll talk about, hey, what standing meetings do you have that we can jump onto? What standing communications go out into the organization that we can add on to? All of those types of things kind of get parsed out in this workshop. And then we measure success, right? One of the sessions that we do in this workshop is around KPIs. What does good look like? What are we shooting for? And it's kind of a double-edged sword, if you will, in that we'll talk about, hey, what does good look like? And do our design decisions get us there? Data is telling us that we should expect a 70 to 75% auto reconciliation rate. But we've made design decisions that's going to maybe not enable that much. So what does good look like? Okay, we would be happy with 60%. And then we get to go live, we monitor, how does auto reconciliations look like? We're sitting at 60%. Great, we've achieved success. So we talk about things like that in the Change Impact workshop so that we really understand what the North Star is as far as success is concerned. Okay. So the tools that we use within this workshop and following it, we have a change impact tracker that we use, so it'll log process impacts, mitigation plans, really help us understand current state, future state, and then it has the ADKAR view that I talked a little bit about. So how are we going to take people through those 5 steps and be able to track at a change level if people are actually moving through those? We talk about stakeholder mapping. We may build something like a coalition map or a heat map to better understand what influence and readiness looks like across the organization. We will structure, we'll come out with a structured communications plan. We have table stakes kind of communications that are part of any type of implementation, right? A kickoff comm, a go live comm. But really after that change impact workshop, we're able to detail out in further detail what are key interventions and communications that we need. And then a KPI dashboard. So again, talking about those KPIs in that session on what are we looking to achieve, what does good look like, and really put that pen to paper in the change impact workshop. Um, and as you start to think about in those KPIs, like what are some of the things I should be thinking about as it relates to change management? How can I tell if my change management has been good? We've done employee engagement surveys or check-ins on their engagement for attendance. So that could be engagement during training sessions. If you're doing something like a change champion network or a change agent network, and you have calls with those folks, how often are they attending those sessions? Kind of just looking for overall types of engagement. Stakeholder satisfaction. This is a lot around your end users at go live and after that. So how are tickets trending? What kinds of questions are we getting through that? Really just understanding stakeholder satisfaction, adoption and usage. This is kind of what we were just talking about, right? Like auto certification thresholds, the metrics around timeliness of completion of tasks within tasks, number of journal entries that are posted above or below a certain threshold, things of that sort, and then error reduction. So, obviously we don't want to have any audit findings. So using that as a potential gauge to see how we're doing, or any exception rates or resolution time in tickets, things like that are different KPIs that we can talk through on what resonates with your organization. So that way, we're not shooting for something else that doesn't necessarily resonate with your users. So I think with that brings us to our third poll.
That is correct. Poll number 3. If you could strengthen one aspect of your organization's change management today, which would you choose? A, clearer communication and transparency. B, better visibility into change impacts. C, leadership, sponsor, and alignment. Or D, consistent post-go live support. Again, as a reminder, this is poll question number 3. Answer 3 of the 4 CPE questions for credit. And just looking at these these answers here, Ushma, they all seem pretty important. And just for myself, I think what I would think from a change management would be super important to me is the leadership, sponsorship, and alignment. I feel like a lot of things can fall into place with the right sponsorship from the leadership and just getting alignment across the organization. I think it can help kind of drive a lot of these other things. But another one for me would be the post go live support, right? You've done all this change, you've implemented, and you want to make sure you're getting the most out of the system, or everybody's actually using it.
Completely. Yeah. So the leadership and sponsorship alignment. So in ProSize methodology, they talk about what we call an active and a visible sponsor. So when they talk about the pitfalls in change management itself, not projects that do or don't have change management, but the pitfalls in change management is not having an actable and visible leader. So we need to have that tone from the top. We need to have somebody saying this is a priority for the organization. And then we need to continue to cascade that down, right? That means managers are meeting with their smaller teams. That means supervisors are saying the same thing with their smaller teams. But we do need that tone from the top. And then thinking about the consistent post-go-live support. This is also something our clients have been coming to us more and more in standing up a world-class center of excellence. And so what we'll do is we'll have another workshop specifically on that topic, and we'll embed who will ultimately be your system or your business admins as part of the project from day one, and that they're absorbing the design discussions and changes and decisions that we're making to set them up for go live, and then also supplementing that with that center of excellence that we were talking about. So Clearsulting has definitely gotten a lot more clients coming to us asking to set up these center of excellences that not just include BlackLine. They'll usually start with BlackLine, but as more and more tools move into the cloud-based, they want to create cloud-based teams that can manage several systems all at once.
Great. Okay, get your last answers in here and we'll see the results.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Right, looks like the clear communication and transparency top of mind, and the better visibility into those impacts. So in the interest of time, maybe we keep moving on, Ushma.
Yeah, that sounds good. So just a little bit more about the Clearsulting approach. I mentioned this at the beginning of the session. We really do believe in that. We're not just there to come in and be consultants and kind of rip up your process and suggest things that aren't going to work. We really want to make sure we're partnering with you in your transformational journey. I mentioned this briefly. We really don't believe in coming in and just putting a tool on top of broken processes. We really want to look at what's underneath, take a look under the hood. But we have the deep BlackLine expertise. You can talk to anyone at BlackLine. They understand the value that we bring as an organization, and the way that we partner with clients is really meant to be really harnessing the deep experience that we have in implementing BlackLine across various types of organizations. We have a very human-centered design. We like to connect with you on a personal level. We want to get to know who you are as a person, and that's the way that we want to treat the rest of your organization, specifically around change management and within the implementations that we do. We'll always try to keep a people-first, human-centered design, because that's how we operate internally at Clearsulting as well. We have proven frameworks. The accolades at the top of the hour just prove that we have tools and we have templates and we have structure that works and has proven time and time again to be successful for all of our clients. And we're really going to help push for cross-functional collaboration. Oftentimes we say that we're uniquely positioned to sit between the business and IT to really help translate what each other is looking for and create that kind of collaboration wheel between the two parts of the organization to drive a transformation altogether. So that's a little bit more about who we are at Clearsulting and what we bring to the table. I think that brings us to our last poll.
You are correct. Okay, so poll question number 4. How does your organization currently measure the success of change initiatives? A, we track adoption metrics. B, we rely on anecdotal feedback from stakeholders. C, we don't have formal change metrics in place. Or D, unsure, measurement is managed somewhere else. So as a reminder, if you meet all the requirements for CPE during the live webinar, your certificate will be automatically generated and available for download directly in the CPE certification widget at the bottom of your screen during or after the session. And if you have any questions or concerns, feel free to email cpe@transformation.blackline.com. I know what I would love to see on here, but I know is typically a challenge, right? It'd be great if we saw everyone that they track these adoption metrics, but we know that reality is probably a little bit different than that. But what have you seen kind of maybe in the best practices, Ushma?
Best practices is you would be tracking those adoption metrics, but oftentimes we just want, organizations just want to get live, and then they're like, okay, now we'll look at the data and then we'll retroactively go back and try to improve the data. And it's just more work. It's more costly to do that. And so if you really define what good looks like from the beginning, and then you continue to reiterate to the organization, we're expecting to see this. This is what we're shooting for. Everyone's got a little piece of the pie, and it almost kind of becomes like a game. Like, can we get to those things that we've said we were going to do? And being open and transparent about those metrics is definitely something that we encourage our clients to do as they head down their BlackLine journeys.
Definitely. Okay, get your last questions in here in about 3 seconds, and we will see the results. Yep, looks like kind of a nice spread, but lots of we don't have formal change metrics in place. Unsure. It doesn't seem like there's a lot of formal adoption metrics, but that's okay. There's always room for improvement.
Exactly. And now you all know one person you can reach out to if you have some questions on it. Happy to kind of answer what those formal metrics would look like. But I'm going to keep moving on here. So, all of this to tie it up in like a nice, pretty bow as far as what does change management really bring to the table, really meant to help accelerate adoption. We want to get you the benefits that you set out to get a lot faster. And if you invest in the change management up front, there's a lot more likelihood you're going to get that than if you don't. They say in the pro sci world, they say that, if you have decent to fair change management, you're 3 times as likely to get your outcomes. If you have solid to strong change management, you're about 7 times as likely to get to those outcomes. So invest early. It'll cost you less in the long run, and it'll get you to the outcomes you're looking to drive. It's going to lower the risk and rework, as I mentioned on the previous slide. No point in looking at data once you've gone live. Let's talk about the data up front, and let's shoot towards that gold North Star. Scalable governance, looking at ways to continue sustainable operating models, such as a center of excellence, or really identifying the collaboration method between IT and the business long term. And then ultimately empowering your teams. Why wouldn't we want to tell our users, hey, we're investing in you. We're finding ways to make sure you feel ready to go and you feel empowered for this upcoming change, and change management does that. So takeaway, if there's one thing I want you to take away from this, is lead the change. Don't react to it. Don't find yourself in a position where you're looking at data, where you're feeling like things don't necessarily make sense. And you got to go back and understand why bad behaviors have started. Lead the change. Let's talk about what good behavior looks like. Let's talk about how we're empowering our people from the beginning. Find a strategic partner if that's not something that you have in-house, or you may have it and it's small, but you need somebody that has the BlackLine experience to support your change management team. Reach out to us. We've worked with organizations either where they've completely outsourced their change management to us, or we've done a hybrid model where they may have an OCM office, and we've partnered with them on how to do change management. Evaluate your readiness. Are you feeling good? Are you guys ready to go live? Do you feel like you're going to see the benefits that you originally wanted to see as you started on your journey? Build that alignment up front. Make sure all stakeholders are singing the same song, talking about messaging the same way, and then really use all of that to ultimately accelerate your adoption. We want to get you as close to fully adopted day one of go live as possible, and creating a place where you can sustain those changes over time. So I know I sped through that just a little bit, but that brings us to the end of our prepared material for today. So I definitely want to just take a moment and say thank you to everyone. There's a lot of you on the line. I hope you took away something from today's conversation. Here's my contact information. I'm happy to always chat with any of you if you have any particular questions. But John, I'll turn it back over to you.
Yeah, great. Thanks. Yeah, we probably don't have time for any questions. So I will continue here. Clearsulting. Okay, so again, thank you everyone for attending today's webinar, which has been part of BlackLine's Finance Innovation Series. Again, remember that your CPE certificate will be automatically generated and available for download directly in the CPE certification widget. We encourage you to complete our post-webinar survey, where you'll also have the opportunity to request a demo if you're interested. We appreciate your feedback. And again, just a big thank you to Clearsulting and Ushma for the presentation. I thought it was excellent. I learned a lot. And thank you to the audience, and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.